welcome to Making Meaning. My name is Jackie Levine. I'm the coordinator of school leadership and marketing services for Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. Making Meaning is a conversation by educators for educators. And we are talking to Dr. Kris Felicello, and we are so happy to have you here with us today. Dr. Felicello is the assistant superintendent in North Rockland School District, but he is also an author of The Teacher and the Admin. And he has a great blog and has done a lot of work in leadership around the country in education. I watched a TEDx by you recently, learned a little bit more about you, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. So thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
We're glad. And we always like to start off with, a quick, how are you doing? How are you feeling? We happen to be in an interesting time period right now with our COVID-19 situation and the crisis impacting our region in particular, but also around the country. So, Kris, how are you doing?
I'm adjusting. It's definitely a challenge, especially for someone like me who likes to be out and likes to be on the move and likes to be doing. And the first when this all kind of started, I was thinking back to I went to a conference up in Albany with my boss, Mrs. Eckert, superintendent of our schools, the superintendent's conference. And the other day I started unpacking and I realized, oh my God, I just started unpacking from that conference because of everything that happened so quickly. And it just evolved so quickly. And we were just working so many hours and just trying to get everything set up and figuring out and so many decisions to make that I hadn't had time to pack. And then I realized, how long ago was that conference? And I realized it was in March, and it was only, it was the end of March as I was unpacking, and it seemed like a lifetime ago when I had been on that trip. So, the whole thing is very surreal. And now as things have slowed down a little bit in terms of that first initial rush, now it's kind of trying to be thoughtful and trying to think about where we need to go as a field in education, where North Rockland needs to go, how I can help and support my community, my students, my teachers. So I'm finding solace in that. Definitely, dealing with anxiety like everybody else at certain points of the day. Sometimes I'm like, this is great and I'm doing well and I'm doing fine. And then other times in the day, I'm feeling stressful, and when is all this going to end, and when are things going to get back to normal? And also that mourning piece of mourning all that we've lost in sports and being an athletic fan, in seeing our kids, I was planning to go to Disney next week. So, that's a piece of it. And then, all of us are dealing with personal things. Unfortunately, I recently lost my dad last week, and we didn't get to say goodbye. We didn't get to have a wake, and those things are definitely emotional and challenging in normal times. So in these times, it's accentuated. And you ask how I'm doing. I'm doing okay. Taking it day to day. I'm just like everybody else out there. I have great days, and then I have days where I have family members that pick me up, or colleagues that pick me up, or my kids who pick me up. So just plugging away and trying to adjust to our new reality.
Thank you, Kris. And we just want to extend our condolences. That must be very hard for you and your family for the passing of your father. So we extend our condolences, and I'm so glad to hear that you are finding the bright spots in your community and your family around you to be able to stay so positive and forward thinking. You said where we go and, thinking ahead to the future, what happens next. And it just reminded me that you were recently named the next superintendent for your district, which is an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations, first of all. And talk a little bit about what that's like on the heels of this situation, stepping into a role where now it is you will be the face of the district, and you will be carrying forward this new normal and repairing and healing your community after what takes place beyond COVID-19. So talk a little bit about that. What are you thinking? What challenges do you see ahead, and how are you planning to approach this?
Yeah, it was interesting. Beginning of the year, and I don't know if you're familiar, but we had a weird thing in North Rockland where we had one of our buildings, a family of raccoons got into that building, and then they brought fleas, and then we
did hear
late opening in one of the schools, and it was this crazy time to open the year. And I was joking with my boss, with Ileana Eckert, and saying, gosh, glad this happened this year, not next year during my first year. And, we had a laugh about it. And, and then as this was all approaching, I'm like, we were kind of joking again. It's like, geez, your last year, you're dealing with all of these things. But in all of that, it's certainly, no matter what your role is in all this, it's challenging. And I think we're trying to, in North Rockland, have the mindset of, number one, we want to get through this. We want to get our kids through this emotionally and get our staff through this emotionally and mentally. But then also, what are some things that we can take as positives when we do get back to normal, and how will we change as an education system, as a district, as a society, because of being forced to do things differently right now. You think about all the educators who have grown in a short amount of time in their skills and in using technology and communication. You think about the fact that we've been forced really to think about each of our courses and each of our grades and breaking them down into the bare minimum of what is really the essential skills and objectives of each course. And too often, I think we got so wrapped up in all of the standards and all of the curriculum that there's so much, and we never get in depth into things, and we cover everything, but how do we dig deep and really get kids thinking about what's truly essential to learn? So those are some of the things that we're trying to guide ourselves through and take this as an opportunity to come out the other side even stronger. And, being positive, lifting people up. There are, like I said before, there are days where I am hopefully lifting people up, but there's plenty of days where I need to be lifted up. And it doesn't have to be a pandemic to get to that place, So how do we be positive, and how do we carry this forth, this kind of us together, we're in this together. And it's not, what you're doing and what you're doing and what you're doing. It's what we're doing as a community and as, a whole county, a whole lower Hudson Valley, all of us coming together. So many great educators that are sharing ideas and doing different things. So, that's kind of my goal as I move into a new role. But that's what I've wanted in all my roles in education, just to try to keep making things a little bit better and moving that needle a little bit.
That's great perspective too. I really enjoy hearing you talk about our content's great, but why do we teach what we teach? Is it necessary right now? And really finding what's most important for us to deliver to our students, which has been connection, community, social emotional learning, and a check-in on their mental health and wellness in this time, above all else, above the American Revolution, above some of the basic phonics or mathematics that they would normally teach. It's important to really just focus on the children and making sure that they're well, and making sure our faculties are well.
So true. And we're living history right now, right? Because, how many 50 years from now, there's going to be kids somewhere, some way studying this time in history, and all the things that changed because of it, and the heroes and the villains and the, who did things well and who didn't. And hopefully we'll look back as at a time where it was a coming together of community and, a progression in our society in a positive way. That's what I'm hoping for.
That's wonderful. Well, I love that you're looking toward the future. And one of the things we like to do on this show is talk about where you've come from, so your past. And would love to hear your story, because I think that's what's most important, especially now, is knowing each other's story. So what is your story, Kris? Talk about, your childhood and how it led you to education, and then how education led you to leadership.
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in Ulster County in Marlborough, New York. And my dad was the phys ed teacher, and my mom was the secretary for a superintendent. And so I grew up, and my dad was a basketball coach, and I grew up in the gyms, and I grew up in the superintendent's office, and So I've always been around schools. Later, when I was a little bit older, my mom went back to school and became a nurse, and had a great career as a nurse as well. So my parents both were very successful and very hard workers. So I've tried to model that. But I remember I was going to school, and as a senior year, and you don't know what you want to do, and that's what I think about today. All the pressure that kids have, and picking the right school and getting to that best college. I had no idea what I was going to do. And I was like, all right, I think I'm going to be a pharmacist, and I wanted to be a pharmacist. And my dad was like, yeah, and he was a character for sure, big Italian guy with, always said what he wanted to say. And he's like, Kris, you don't want to be a pharmacist. You'll be stuck indoors in a lab coat all day. Go be a gym teacher. It's great. You get to play with the kids. You get to be outside. You get to have fun. And I was like, all right, and I ended up going to SUNY Cortland, and it was the best decision I ever made. I became a phys ed teacher. I taught upstate in Onteora, New York, which is, it's actually the largest district in New York State in terms of land, not in terms of population, but it goes all the way from Woodstock, the town of Woodstock, all the way up to Big Indian, and Phoenicia is in between, and Boyceville, and this whole area. And I really loved it. I was 21, coaching varsity basketball. Their coach had retired, and I got to take that over and learned a lot, and met a lot of great families and kids. I call them kids. They're 40, over 40 now, that I'm still in contact with through those days. And I got my my administration degree at SUNY New Paltz because I wanted to be an athletic director, and that was kind of my dream job, was to be an athletic director. And when I got that degree, I was fortunate enough to be offered the athletic director and assistant principal job in Chester, in Orange County. And I was able to coach another year. So, and then after a year there, they were building a new school, and it was a junior senior high school at the time. And they were going to make it into a middle school and a high school in a new building. And they really wanted that middle school model. And the superintendent asked me if I would be the middle school principal. And I was like, sure. I didn't know any better. And I was, for a year, the varsity basketball coach at Chester, the athletic director, and the middle school principal, who were setting up and it was really an exciting time, and a lot of planning and a lot to do. Eventually they said, all right, this is the last year that you can coach, because you have to focus on those other things. And I was okay with that. And after doing that for 5 years, I was like, yeah, I love the sports stuff, but I really like being a principal better than the athletic director portion of things. I like the curriculum, believe it or not, and I like the interactions with the families, and the getting kids motivated for the school piece. And so I wanted to become a principal in a bigger district, a bigger opportunity, bigger organization. And that's when I was hired in North Rockland as the middle school principal at Farley. And I loved it there. I met a lot of great people, learned so much. And then we had some financial issues in North Rockland, as you probably know, and did some shifting around. And I was asked to be the principal of Fieldstone Middle School, which was a much bigger school at the time. We went from 3 middle schools to 1, had about 1,300 students, and kind of built that with a new vision. And that was so much fun. And then the opportunity came across for central office, which is something that I had aspired to. And I did HR for 2 years. And then when my current position, the assistant superintendent for educational services, became available, we did the search, and my boss was like, listen, I think maybe we might be able to find a better match in HR. Would you be willing to go to that side of the house? So I was like, sure. And ended up loving that and loving that work. And, and been blessed to work for an amazing superintendent and somebody who I just admire and just learn from every single day, and a great board in North Rockland. And when she retired, I was honored to be, offered the position, and it was very emotional for me, because losing somebody, that you look up to and you can go to every single day was very, very sad. And I found myself getting emotional, but also excited to take that next step in my career. But, it certainly made me feel better speaking to her. She's like, listen, I live, walking distance from central office, so you can walk up anytime and come up. And, she means that too, because whenever I'm sick, she'll make, oh, I made you some chicken soup, or, so that's the kind of person she is. So.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so that's kind of my my eclectic career in a nutshell. Yeah, so that's what brings me here.
It also sounds like along the way you've built some really powerful relationships with people, in particular your leadership team.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's probably why I love what I do so much is all the great people I've met along the way. And I've had great bosses. I've had great colleagues. I've had great students that I've worked with, great parents. And, I still keep in contact with a lot of those people. And, as we were talking about, some people you may not talk to for a few months or even years. And then, something happens in your life and you need to be picked up. And as I said, losing my dad and so many people that reached out to me and told stories or sent me texts with little stories or emails or phone calls. So, to have those people there to lift me up in a time of need was certainly comforting.
I'm sure. That's wonderful. It is all about relationships. It's all about making sure you're connected to folks and staying connected in meaningful ways. And it sounds like through your, you had almost a traditional but untraditional pathway coming into leadership. It sounds like as an athletic director, you may have brought an even different perspective in terms of team building, relationship building, and coaching to the leadership lens as you became a building leader and then later central office. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I haven't met as many athletic directors who've gone through into central office and now superintendency.
Yeah, well, it's because athletic director is, when I tell you this, one of the most difficult positions in any district.
Mm-hmm.
We have a legend, Joe Casarella, is our athletic director, and I always tell him, geez, you have one of the hardest jobs around, because your job is never off as an athletic director. There's always a bus somewhere. There's always a contest somewhere or something going on, and your phone is always ringing. So it's a challenge. But I found in coaching, what I like about coaching was it was very, I guess you worked hard and you practiced and you followed, a process every single day, and you were rewarded for that, whether it was by wins on the court for me as a basketball coach, or it was the relationships, or it was the improvement. But there was that, that tangible goal that we were all going for, which was a win or coming together as a team. And I've tried to bring that same approach to education and to the classroom, because when you think about it, and I've been a proponent of kind of changing how we do homework, and we have a new homework policy in North Rockland that we followed, and sometimes it can be misconstrued as if we do homework differently, then we're not working hard. But that relationship between education and athletics is, what is that end goal? What do I want the kids to be able to do? And it's not so much, yes, you have to work hard to be able to be successful and to be able to do what I want you to do, but not everybody follows that same path, just like in athletics. And, and I would make this comparison. Sometimes people would say, well, yeah, but what if a kid didn't practice, if a kid practiced and worked hard, shouldn't he be able to play? And I would say, absolutely, kids should go home, and I'll, as a coach, tell them, you need to work on your jump shot. You need to work on your agility. Here's some drills you can do. And they either do it or they don't. And if they do and they're able to perform, then they're going to play and we're going to be successful. If they don't and somebody else outperforms them, then they will be successful. And I try to relate that to the homework piece. If I do my homework and I'm able to demonstrate that I have competency in the skills and objectives of the course, great. But if I don't do that homework and I still am able to do that, should my grade be different? Should that I get a 80 because I didn't do homework, but I'm really a 95 student. So that was kind of that
Interesting
approach I've tried to take. Yeah.
That's a great approach. I know a lot of our schools are re-examining their homework policies and its impact on their students' learning. So I'll be interested to hear how you eventually land all together as a district, unless you've already gotten there to a point where you feel you're very strong. But I know it's a work in progress for a lot of districts. So it's a passion project of mine too. I have my own opinions about homework as well, and it can be a very testy subject for folks, depending, almost right up there with the reading wars. What to give and what not to give as homework. So very interesting. So you are also not just an education leader in the formal way of leading buildings and leading a district, but you are also an educational leader in terms of edupreneurship, and you are an author, a blogger, a speaker. So talk to me a little bit about how that happened. How did you get into doing those things? What inspired you to start writing a book?
Yeah, it's so interesting how those things, happen. And, I was like many people on my bucket list of I want to write a book someday. And that was something that I always wanted to do. I never thought it would be in education. I thought it would be stories growing up or something like that. But I still remember it was a day we worked with a consultant named Angela Stockman. She's fabulous and does a lot of work around writing with students and kind of a um, different approaches for kids that are reluctant writers, right? Or print resistant, as she calls it. So she has them build with parts, and it's really a great approach. And had a lot of conversations with her about writing and things like that. And she's published a few books with Mark Barnes, who does the Hack Learning series. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But one day, Gary Armida, who is our English coordinator, he's also a writer. He used to write for USA Today, Baseball America. I tease him. He had a cover of USA Today sports section a couple of times, and very talented writer. And we were speaking with Angela one day, and she was saying, "You guys should do some writing. You guys do some great things in North Rockland." And so we got our heads thinking, and I was like, yeah, let's talk about it. So him and I met one day and we're like, let's try to write a hack learning book. And we brought out the template of what they had. And then we said, you know what? Like I said, I don't even know if people are interested when I have to write. I don't know if I'm any good as a writer. And I said, maybe, so we landed on, let's start this blog. So him and I started a blog where it was called The Teacher and the Admin. And we wrote about different topics, from a teacher's perspective, an administrator's perspective. And we were shocked by how popular it became, and we were getting a lot of recognition through Twitter and social media, and the site started to build and build and build, and met so many great people along the way that were supportive of us and saying, hey, you guys got to write a book. And after doing that, we said, all right, let's do it. And we ended up writing The Teacher and the Admin, Making Schools Better for Kids is the name of it. And our approach is we take a topic each chapter and a little intro on that topic. One of the chapters is homework, one is grading, one is relationships with kids, and all those different topics. So we have a little intro opening, and then I'll write from the administrator's point of view of things, how to make it, our thoughts on that. And Gary will write it from the teacher's point of view. And then, there's some things that teams can do together to come together as a teacher and administrator team, because we know when teachers and administrators are working together, a district's better, a building is better. So that was kind of our approach. And, Gary's a great writer that I've learned from and has kind of helped me to become a better writer. So that's kind of how, in a nutshell, we got started with it.
That is a great story. And I just love the approach you've taken of giving both perspectives, because it is all about perspective. As a teacher, you may see things very differently from your administration. And it's not until you can really be in each other's shoes and see it from both sides that you can really unpack a problem and address it so that everyone feels heard and that you're really looking at the needs of the situation. So that's a great approach. And would I be safe in assuming that that Angela is your guru? I think a lot of us in education have a guru, have someone that at some point we followed as a teacher or followed in general, and what they said just made so much sense. And you might have started following not only their work, but also their workshops and conferences. Alan November, who I'm on with next, was actually my guru. I learned of him in 2011, 2012 as a teacher. And I started following his Building Learning Communities, attending the conference, and reading his book, Who Owns the Learning. And then at some point, as I entered into leadership, I applied to present at his annual conference. And we connected over a couple of projects, and now we're still in connection today. And I'm just so thankful for that relationship. So is there someone out there, is it Angela, is it someone else that you would consider your guru?
Well, it's so funny. I hear, talking about Alan November. I don't remember when it was, but years ago, they used to do the TLI at Mohawk in New Paltz.
Yeah.
And I saw Alan present there, and I was blown away. And I remember I was like, taking notes, and I'm like, I couldn't write down fast enough of all the different things that he had to offer. So that's great to hear. What a great guru for you to have. Yeah, I mean, Angela has definitely been an inspiration and somebody that I consider a friend, and certainly helped me to become better as an educator. Gary and I tell the story often of we went to a conference and saw Rick Wormley speak, and Rick was somebody that, like, the first education book that I read when I became an administrator. Paul Ray, who was another mentor of mine, he was my principal when I was hired in Chester. He went to see him and he said, "You have to read this book." It was Meet Me in the Middle, and it was an autographed copy by Rick Wormley. And then ever since then, I just am so aligned with his philosophy on education, on redos, on grading, on homework, on connection with kids, on building anticipation and novelty and how we teach. So I've always loved him. And, Gary and I saw we connected a little bit on social media, on Twitter with Rick, and, he was been supportive of our blog. And then we saw him at a conference and he's like, "Oh my God, hey." And he knew who we were. And I'm like, I can't believe Rick Wormley knows who we are. And he's like, "You guys have to write a book." And so he's been an inspiration of mine, and, just met so many good people through this whole process. Evan Robb is, and I think you guys have had him scheduled to come, and then we got canceled because of everything going on in the world. But Evan's a great educator, and his mom Laura is somebody who myself and my wife have followed in her, as a reading guru for years. So just so many great people that I've met, and now start to meet more and more of Basil Marin he's an AP down, an up and coming educator that I get ideas with, Vernon Wright. I mean, there's just so many people out there that I've had the pleasure of connecting with through this whole process that, that I feel like I've learned from every step of the way. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Good names. I'm going to start looking up some folks. I was taking notes that I'm going to start looking into some people that I haven't heard of before. But yes, Evan Robb, he may be still presenting at our Edupreneur Institute if we can get it up and running in July. Hopefully this whole situation will be over with by then, but we'll see.
I'm signed up. I'm bringing some people, so hopefully it's...
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. I think inspiring edupreneurship is one of the best things we can do, and you're a shining example of that. So it just helps to lend our ideas to the region and beyond and be real education leaders in a different way. So thank you for that. I would like to talk to you a little bit about leadership at this point. You've had a long experience in leadership. You've served in many roles, and I'm sure you would agree one of the things I notice most about leadership is at some point, somewhere in your journey, someone says to you, you'd make a great leader. You should really go into leadership. Should consider this. Here's a program. You should look into getting your degree for this. And sometimes, it then becomes on us to pay it forward and find those people too and shine a light on them and encourage them. So talk about how you've inspired other leaders, future leaders, and prompted them. How do you go about that? How do you find that someone, and how do you encourage them?
Yeah, it's interesting. And kind of as you evolve as a leader, your philosophy changes a bit. And as I've gotten older and grayer, I start to realize that my job as a leader is really to try to make people around me better. And, how do I lift people up? How do I put them in a position to be successful? How do I make it about them and not me and my ego and making me look good, which, we can say all the time, but as leaders, we do have egos. So how do we put that aside? And how do we do it for the fact of doing the right thing and lifting people up? But, I've worked with, in my role, I supervise, we call them specialists. They're really, teachers on special assignment who are teacher leaders. And many of them were able to put up with me for so long, number one. But, I really saw them as leaders, and they've all gone into and are serving as assistant principals or principals somewhere, many of them in our district, others in other districts. And now it's like, it's kind of, I think it's, and I'm thinking about our district in North Rockland, we've always built capacity within and found good leaders. And now I'm trying to say, all right, well, who is that next group? And I've, Karima, I've talked to her. So if she's listening, I want her to get her degree, and Danielle, Viviana, and James. So, I'm targeting people saying, hey, you guys, I think, are the type of people that our field needs. and what do I think we need, and what am I looking for in that next leader? It's somebody that is really unafraid to put themselves out on a limb to make a decision that's based on what's best for kids and not what's best for them and their career. I'm looking for people that are hardworking and progressive thinking, and really are more worried about the individual student than if I cut this kid a break, then everybody else is going to have to do this, or this is going to happen if we do this for this kid. I want people to say, hey, this kid that's in front of me right now, what does that student, what does that child, what does that person need, and how can I use my influence, my position to get that kid what they need to be successful? So people that have that philosophy are the type of people that I want to see go into leadership and education. And we're seeing more and more of that. And when those people are in education, that's when we're starting to see right now kind of that, that tipping point of things really changing and not being the same way that they were for 150 years when we had the Industrial Revolution, and we had kids sitting in rows, and we wanted to build a society of factory workers because that's what we needed. Well, now we need thinkers. Now we need people that are, empathetic and are making decisions that are going to put our world in a better place moving forward, not just the most productive world. So those are the types of leaders that I want. And then how can I support them, push them, and put them in a position to be successful that accentuates their strengths?
That's great. Thank you. And I think it really rests on the leadership programs that are developing leaders to think of the skills that our leaders are most going to need in the future and make sure they're supporting the development of those skills in the programs. We happen to have several leadership programs at PNW BOCES, namely our Future School Leaders Academy, our Manhattanville Doctoral Program. So we have a lot of opportunities to develop future leaders. Kris, from your point of view, what should our preparation programs be looking to do and to develop in future leaders? Where should the focus area be?
I think we need to find leaders that are different, that look different, that think different, that have different backgrounds. We have a tendency, and this is something I've tried to challenge myself with, when we go through the interview process, when we go through the tapping on the shoulder process, people that are like us, those are the people that we kind of want to be around and we want to hire, right? But do they really challenge our thinking and make us better? Of course, we need people that are philosophically aligned with us, but we need that diversity in our field to get people to think a little differently, because there may be, a Black future leader that grew up completely differently from me, that'll see things that my Black students need that I could never understand because I didn't grow up that way. Or somebody that grew up in a different part of the country, or a different family life. So we need that. We're so much stronger when we have that diversity in our field. I think that's one we really need to think about. How do we target, more leaders of color, more leaders that think differently, more leaders that have that diverse background, and then that practical aspect of how do we get how do we get those training programs to be more realistic to what it's going to be like to be that leader? And I know we do the internships, which are great, but that's also dependent, much like when you did your student teaching, on who your mentor is and what they're able to give to you and what kind of style. And, even in teaching too often, we were closed off in our silos, which were starting to break down. But hey, I learned how to teach from my student teacher 20 years ago. And then, how much have I seen somebody else teach or done it differently? And maybe they weren't the best teacher. So now but they've, they were the veteran that had the influence, and they've gotten 8 student teachers, and now they've made, 8 people that maybe are similar style as them. And that's not what we need. So, constantly looking for different ideas, different thinkers, different people that have different backgrounds that our kids can relate to and can see it through a different lens, I think is essential. I like the courses, and I always liked the courses when I was in my preparation school that talked about scenarios and had I remember one course we had a mock collective bargaining, role play that was great, and I still remember it all these years later. I remember one where there was different scenarios, and we had to discuss among our group how we would handle them, and then the professor would talk about what it would look like. we talk in education about having kids up and moving, about kids having relevant activities, about kids not sitting and getting information, but rather interacting and doing it. Too often, I think, and hopefully it's starting to shift, but too often our universities are the opposite of that. It's lecture halls and we're giving you information. And we're starting to realize, especially today, that it is about these connections when we're developing people in the future, because you can go on YouTube and find any lecture. There's plenty of universities that have all their courses right online. So it's about that interaction. It's about that relationship. It's about, that bouncing off of ideas and developing ideas and teaching kids how to think and the pitfalls and to see the problems before they're even occurring.
Those are some great thoughts, Kris. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before we part today, I just wanted to get a sense from you. Where do you think our teachers are going to need the most support as a leader once we do go back to our normal?
I think teachers are going to need, just like the rest of us, are going to need the most support in being people, in the human aspects, because unfortunately, people have lost loved ones already. People are going to lose loved ones. People are as I said before, mourning different things that have happened in their lives or are happening in their lives. So we as leaders are going to need to truly be servant leaders that lift our teachers up when all the dust settles, because we're going to have to be, just like we want our teachers to be understanding of kids and all the things that they're going through all this time. We are going to have to be understanding of our teachers and understand that in these high pressure times, or in these times when, it again is all over, but we've maybe had some trauma that we need to deal with, we're going to have those days where teachers may not react the way that we would want them to. They may react out of character. They may be impatient. They may be short. They may be angry. How do we lift them up? How do we not take it personally? How do we take care of them as people? And I think we need our teachers right now to take care of our kids as people. We need to take care of our teachers as people, as leaders and as administrators. So that's what I think is going to be our biggest charge right now as we're dealing with this home learning situation, but also when we come back, when the dust settles.
Those are very inspiring words. Thank you so much, Kris. And thank you for joining us today on Making Meaning. It's been a delight to get to know you, and I look forward to many more partnerships together. So if you haven't already, please check out The Teacher and the Admin. And Kris, how would folks best reach you if they wanted to ask questions or email you?
Yeah, you can email me at kfelicello@northrockland.org, and I'm on the district, the North Rockland webpage. You can find me there. I'm on Twitter at kfelicello. People could certainly message me there. What else am I on? LinkedIn, Instagram, all those things. So, and I'm always open to having conversations about education and making new connections. So, anybody out there, feel free to reach out.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our followers. I hope you have a wonderful day. Be healthy, be well. This has been Making Meaning with Jackie Levine and Kris Felicello. Thank you.